Why do you think, are banks doing this because they're scared of the regulators? Or are they doing this because the people running the banks are prosecuting their political beliefs? I mean, when a bank holds a seminar, taking up valuable employee time to discuss whether a man can breastfeed, are they doing that because regulators are leaning on them? Or are they doing that because the CEO really thinks that's subject to debate?
I think it's definitely the latter, and I think it's also mental management.
What do you mean the latter?
What you just watched is exactly why Senator John Kennedy continues to stand out in congressional hearings. This was not political theater, and it was not soundbite hunting. This was a U.S. Senator doing what Congress is supposed to do, asking uncomfortable questions and refusing to let powerful institutions hide behind vague answers. John Kennedy was not yelling or posturing. He was doing something far more effective. He was demanding specifics. Which banks? Who made the decision? And why Americans are quietly losing access to basic financial services because of their beliefs. And whether you agree with John Kennedy politically or not, the issue he raised here should concern everyone. Because once banks start deciding who gets to participate in the financial system based on ideology, we no longer have a free market. We have permission-based living. If you care about accountability, transparency, and what is really happening inside these congressional hearings that rarely get proper coverage, you are in the right place. This is Congress Lens. I am Audrey. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation matters.
Senator Warner is a reasonable man. Everybody on this committee knows that. And he's a good man. And I understand he's interested in process, and I'm not saying that process isn't important. But if the United States of America has been taking taxpayer money and using it to produce a transgender opera in Colombia, then I want to know about it. And I'm glad to know about it. And it seems to me that that's the main issue with respect to all of this. And I look forward to talking further with my friend, Mr. Warner, about that. I mean, for 4 years, under President Biden, as was his right, the topic of discussion in Washington was who needs to pay more in taxes? Who needs to pay more in taxes? That's no longer the main question. The main question is now, as it should be in my judgment, what the hell happened to all the money? And we're going to find out. Now, I need to get back to the subject, with the exception of Mr. Klein, whose testimony I enjoyed. I understand his position. He wants to let the CFPB run America's banks, and I appreciate that perspective, but Mr. Klein, it's not going to happen in your natural lifetime or mine. Now, let me turn to the other gentlemen. What I hear Mr. McCauley, Mr. Ring, and Mr. Gannon saying is that some of America's banks have been discriminating, debanking customers because of their religious beliefs, because they support the Second Amendment, or because they hate fossil fuels. I don't want to go with all three of you. I'll run out of time. Mr. Ring, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Which banks?
Well, I think it's been publicly reported that Bank of America has certainly picked and choose winners.
Who else?
I think Chase Bank has.
Who else?
I think Citibank has.
Who else?
I think KeyBank has.
Who else?
I'm going to probably run out of names pretty soon, but I think the mega banks are. Old Glory Bank is not, of course. We love the Second Amendment and fossil fuels.
We need to get those banks in here, Mr. Chairman. We need to get all those CEOs in here.
I would agree.
Now, why? I appreciate your candor. Why do you think, are banks doing this because they're scared of the regulators? Or are they doing this because the people running the banks are prosecuting their political beliefs? I mean, when a bank holds a seminar, taking up valuable employee time to discuss whether a man can breastfeed, are they doing that because regulators are leaning on them, or are they doing that because the CEO really thinks that's subject to debate?
I think it's definitely the latter, and I think it's also middle management.
What do you mean the latter?
It is not the regulators. I do not believe the regulators pushed the big banks to debank conservative causes.
Don't?
I do not. I think it was their internal choice by these big banks.
Why?
Well, why? The same reason why big tech pick and choose winners. I think big banks pick and choose winners that they care about, and that's why we need a market solution, because you can't regulate that type of behavior without having unintended consequences. And now every time you get a customer application, you've got to fill out 5 forms as to why you did or did not pick that customer.
So you think that that's the management of these banks that are just imposing their own politics on customers and ultimately to the detriment of shareholders? Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Either you two gentlemen in my last 10 seconds disagree with that?
I strongly disagree, Senator. Yes, I've spent a lot of time with a number of bank CEOs.
Who do you think it is?
I believe it's the regulators.
How about you, sir?
It's definitely regulators. All the big banks wanted to work with crypto and were scared away from it by the regulatory apparatus.
All right, I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your testimony. Mr. Ring, you work hard to protect your customers' sensitive personal information, do you not?
Yes, sir.
And you wouldn't just turn it over to anybody who walked into your bank, would you?
No.
And Mr. McCauley, I assume the same is true for you.
Now let's break down what actually happened in this hearing. After watching the full exchange, John Kennedy's line of questioning lands exactly where it needed to. What he exposed is not some fringe theory. It is a real and growing concern. Americans are being debanked not because they broke the law or pose a financial risk, but because of what they believe, what they support, or the industries they are associated with. And John Kennedy did something many politicians avoid. He asked witnesses to name names. When Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, and KeyBank were mentioned, the conversation shifted immediately. This stopped being abstract and became very real. These are not small institutions. These are financial giants that control access to everyday economic life. John Kennedy also zeroed in on the most important question. Who is actually driving this behavior? One witness argued clearly that regulators are not the main force behind debanking, that these banks are making internal choices driven by leadership and ideology, that executives are imposing their own political views on customers, even when it harms shareholders. The comparison to big tech was especially telling. We have already seen what happens when unelected corporate leaders decide who gets a voice and who gets shut out. John Kennedy is warning that the same mindset is spreading into banking. Other witnesses strongly disagreed and pointed directly at regulators. They argued that banks are acting out of fear of regulatory punishment, especially when it comes to industries like crypto. But here is the point John Kennedy made clear, even without saying it directly. Either explanation is deeply troubling. If regulators are pressuring banks, then government agencies are abusing power to shape private markets. If banks are acting on ideology, then unelected executives are controlling access to financial services based on belief. Either way, Americans lose choice. They lose access. And they lose freedom. That is why John Kennedy's call to bring bank CEOs before Congress matters. If decisions this serious are being made, The people making them should be forced to explain themselves publicly and under oath. And notice something else. John Kennedy did not call for more heavy-handed regulation. He warned against it. He pointed out that excessive regulation creates bureaucracy and unintended consequences that end up hurting everyone. Instead, he pushed for transparency and accountability. Sunlight, public scrutiny, letting the public see who is making these decisions and why. This is what real oversight looks like. Not slogans or speeches, but direct questions, real names, and no tolerance for vague answers. No matter where you fall politically, a system where banks act as ideological gatekeepers and regulators operate in the shadows should concern you. John Kennedy made that case clearly in this hearing, and that is why this moment deserves attention. This is Congress Lens. I am Audrey. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments. Do you think banks are acting out of ideology, regulatory fear, or both?